Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. This is me, Nadia Rajpoot from Desi TV USA. Let me take you to the special report. Ethnic Media Services and the Federal Trade Commission held a national briefing on Friday, 15 December 2023 about combating auto retail scams. Speakers of the programs are Malini Mittal, Jamie D. Brooks, Sania Shah-Raspi. Let's watch the informational video about what a consumer must take into consideration when buying a car and what are the rules of the Federal Trade Commission to protect the consumers.
The FTC is the leading federal agency charged with protecting the public from deceptive or unfair business practices and unfair methods of competition. Today, our topic is all about buying cars. And a new rule that we believe is going to protect all of us as we go through this process from scams. The rule is called the Combating Auto Retail Scams, spelled CARS for short, rule. Combating Auto Retail Scams rule, which requires transparency in the vehicle shopping process. It will also generate major savings for consumers, possibly as much as $3.4 billion a year. And it will save consumers an estimated 72 million hours each year. Today's briefing will explain how it will do this. It is a rule that includes key provisions about pricing, add-on products and services, as well as buyer's consent. Here to explain to you what you need to know to share with your audiences are three speakers from the FTC. Malini Mittal, Associate Director, Division of Financial Practices with the FTC. Jamie D. Brooks, Attorney, Division of Financial Practices, also FTC. And Sania Shah-Raspi, Attorney, Division of Financial Practices, the Federal Trade Commission. We ask speakers to speak slowly, as I am, for interpreters in Spanish, Mandarin, and Korean. And we ask reporters enter questions in the chat. Our speakers will answer questions in the chat as they have time and feel they have particularly relevant information to share. We will be sending a video of today's briefing and expanded bios with contact information for each speaker.
Thank you so much for taking the time to hear what we have to say today. Like Sandy said, I'm Malini Mittal, and I'm with the Federal Trade Commission, but I do have to make a quick disclaimer. The remarks we're making today are our own. We are staff, and we are not speaking on behalf of the Commission or any individual commissioner. All right, with that, let's get started, and let's dive right in. So what did the FTC announce this week? Slide 2, please. The FTC announced the CARS rule, Combating Auto Retail Scams. The CARS rule focuses on two very harmful practices that we've seen consumers experience. First, bait and switch tactics. That's where dealers advertise a certain term, like a low price, to get you to come to the lot. But once you spend the time driving out there and you spend hours on the lot, you learn that the car is way more expensive than what was advertised. That's called a bait and switch scam. The second scam that the rule aims at combating is junk fees. So as Sandy was saying before the call officially started, auto contracts are long, they're complicated, it's a long transaction. Unfortunately, it can be easy to hide charges in those contracts for things that the dealer and the consumer have never spoken about and the consumer doesn't really want. Now, Jamie and Sonia are going to talk more about bait and switch and junk fees. But before we get into more details on what the rule says, I want to talk about who this affects and why people should care. Dan, can you turn it to slide 2? So the rule should help car buyers save $3.4 billion a year and 72 million hours in shopping time. And that's not all. Next slide. The rule also specifically helps service members who need cars to get around sprawling military bases. The CARS rule means that they will be able to make this essential, expensive purchase without worrying about tricks or traps, so they can focus on protecting us and our country. The rule also helps honest dealers who will be able to compete on a level playing field. They won't have to worry about losing business to a competitor that is pretending to have a lower price to lure consumers onto their lot, but then charging much more once the consumer gets there. All right, next slide. So now let's dive into what the CARS rule says. First, dealers can't lie. So no lies about key information like costs, financing terms, add-ons, rebates, etc. Second, dealers must tell consumers the offering price. That's the actual price anyone can buy the car for. They also have to tell consumers they don't have to pay for extra items on top of that price for things like service contracts. And also, if they talk about monthly payments, which can look very small, they have to tell the consumers the total they will pay. So for example, if they're saying the monthly payment is only a couple of $100, but they're assuming that your contract lasts for 10 years, they've got to tell you that total price or that total payment amount. Okay, third, no junk fees. So dealers cannot charge for items that provide no benefit to the consumer. Some examples here are duplicative warranties, where you already have a warranty on the car, but the dealer's trying to sell you another warranty that doesn't give you any extra coverage. Another example is if the dealer tries to sell you products or services that are incompatible with your car, so you can't use them at all. So things like that would be if you're buying an electric vehicle, a service contract for oil changes. That's a good example. Dealers, fourth, can only charge for items if consumers know what the charge is for and they agree to pay for it. So no more hiding charges in contracts. And those are the 4 key pillars of the auto rule, of the CARS rule. That is it. These 4 principles are what we really want everyone to remember today. Okay, now we're going to talk more about the whys. Next slide. So I'm going to start with why the FTC is so focused on cars. Then I'm going to turn it over to Jamie and Sonia to answer the remaining whys that I have posted here. Why is the FTC focused on bait and switch tactics? And why is the FTC focused on junk fees? All right, next slide. So why is the FTC focused on cars? So cars are one of the most expensive purchases a consumer will ever make. For many consumers, buying a car is the second largest purchase after buying a home. Now, I'm going to talk more about costs and how they're increasing in a moment. But first, I want to note that having a car, in addition to being expensive, is also essential. People rely on cars to get to work, school, doctor's offices, grocery stores, medical visits, and other important tasks in their daily lives. And cars have become increasingly costly. The average price of a new car sold at a new dealership last year was $46,000. For a used car, it was $30,000.
Thanks, Sandy, and thanks, Melanie. So as Melanie mentioned, the rule focuses on combating 2 harmful practices, bait and switch tactics and junk fees. Why did the FTC focus on these practices? Let's start with bait and switch. Bait and switch advertising is where dealers advertise one price to get consumers in the door but then charge consumers much more after they've invested their time traveling to the dealership and spent hours on the lot. The FTC has brought many actions against auto dealers engaged in deceptive advertising, including bait and switch. For instance, the FTC has charged dealers with making misrepresentations about the price of a vehicle, the monthly payment, and about an affiliation with government programs. So let's look at a few examples. Turning to the next slide. Here we have casino auto sales, and you can see the dealer advertised vehicles with a specific low price, for example, $18,000. And that was to get buyers in the door. But at the very bottom of the ad, the dealer buried some fine print. And if you pull that out, you can see that it says the buyer actually has to pay an additional $5,000 down payment on top of the advertised price. And you can see that in our slide. That's deceptive because when a customer sees an advertisement that prominently displays a price for a specific vehicle, they can reasonably expect to pay that price regardless of the fine print. And as you can see, the advertisements here, I don't know if you can see because they're a little small, but they're in Spanish, specifically targeting Spanish-speaking consumers. So turning now to the next slide, which is Paramount Kia. Here, the dealer put out a video advertising $0 down and only $99 a month. That's the low monthly payment Malini mentioned. But the ad had fine print that you can only read if you freeze the video, which we've done in this slide. It said, actually, only the first 3 payments are $99. For 69 out of the 72 payments, the buyer would have to pay a much higher monthly payment, over $500, at an APR over 9% plus an administrative fee. Those terms are not clear from this ad. So people may choose this dealer expecting to pay $99 a month instead of going to other dealers who tell the truth about their prices. As one last example, let's look at traffic jam events on the next slide. Here, the FTC sued a dealer ad agency that sent out deceptive mailers, supposedly directing consumers to a COVID-19 stimulus relief program. The mailers used a mock check that you can see here and what looked like a United States seal to lure consumers to a designated location. But when consumers arrived, they only found a car lot hosting a sale. So this is another example where car dealers use bait and switch advertising to get customers in the door. These deceptive tactics can cause real harm to consumers who waste significant time and money visiting dealerships and may not discover the deception or the real price of the car until after they've spent hours traveling to the dealership and on the lot, if at all.
Thank you, Sandy, and thanks, Jamie. So why did we focus on junk fees? Well, we were concerned that people were paying for junk fees, and these include additional items that provide no benefit or items that consumers don't know about or don't want. Dan, could you change the slide, please? So first, for a little bit of background, what do we mean when we say additional items? We mean add-ons, and these add-ons can include things like extended warranties, guaranteed automobile or asset protection, also called gap agreements, VIN etching, exterior interior coatings that are supposed to protect the vehicle, and many more. Slide, please. So individual add-ons can cost consumers thousands of dollars and can significantly increase the overall cost to the consumer in the transaction. In the past 2 years alone, dealers have substantially increased prices for these add-ons, even though such products and services largely are not constrained by supply. A significant consumer protection concern is that consumers are paying for add-on without knowing about them or expressly agreeing to them. The long paperwork-heavy vehicle shopping process can make it difficult for consumers to spot these add-on charges, particularly when advertised prices or payment terms don't mention add-ons at all. So for example, in a recent FTC law enforcement action, we had consumers visiting a dealership that were required to complete a stack of paperwork that ran more than 60 pages long and required more than a dozen signatures. This type of conduct can target immigrants, communities of color, and service members. For example, we've brought cases against dealers we've said hid charges for add-ons people didn't want in their contracts, or charged more for the advertised price, and they did this more often with Black, Latino, and American Indian consumers. Or that they charged those consumers more for the same add-on products. In other instances, dealers might wait until late in the transaction to mention add-ons and do so in a misleading manner. Dealers have also represented that add-ons are required when in fact they are not, and have misrepresented the purported benefits of such add-ons. So in fact, another recent FTC enforcement action, the commission cited a survey finding that 83% of consumers from a specific dealership were charged for add-ons that they did not authorize or were as a result of deceptive claims. And I just wanted to share one thing, what one consumer had said. So this consumer paid for a $2,000 service contract that the dealer said was free, and a $900 gap agreement that the dealer said was mandatory to complete the purchase. The consumer only learned about these charges once they got home, so after the deal was finalized. And they said, I'm quoting, "I feel I've been taken advantage of, to be honest with you. They only let you skim through the paperwork. You're so tired, you're so worn down, you don't want to be there. They take advantage of that. They never lose, they never lose." So here are some of the things the rule does to combat these junk fees. The first thing is dealers can't charge junk fees for items that provide no benefit to the consumer, like a duplicative warranty or items that are incompatible with the car. The dealer can charge for items only if the consumer knows what the charge is for and agrees to pay for it. And on the next slide, we have some additional comments that we received from consumers, military members, and even dealership employees. So the first one, the consumer notes that they made me sign the sales bill on an electronic device, never pointed me to the number I was getting charged for. They rushed through the electronic pages in a hurry, straight to the signature box, and they charged me for things I never agreed on. A military consumer noted that when purchasing their first car, it set me back financially for years. I know many young military people who purchased vehicles and were instantly so far upside down after leaving the dealership with thousands of dollars in add-on junk charges. And lastly is from a dealership employee who expressed that none of us working here at the dealership in sales benefit from these practices, and that they cringe every time a customer comes in. And you can read the rest of the quote there. And it says that at the end, it says, we hope that the regulators understand the positive implications this would have for dealership employees, both financially and mentally. So those were some of the things we were hearing. This concludes our portion of the presentation.
I think this rule is really going to help consumers, and it's going to help honest dealers by leveling the playing field so they don't have to compete with bogus prices.
Great. Sonia Sharasby.
Thanks, Sandy. I'll echo what my colleague said and also really stress that I think that these 4 pillars of this provision will really change the marketplace for the better for consumers. It's particularly the offering price provision. We're really hoping that this will make a difference when it comes to car shopping.
And repeat that again. The offering price has to be transparent. This is part of the push for transparency. Could you just rephrase it in very common use language?
We hope the offering price will make the car shopping experience better and more transparent for consumers.
Terrific. And I would add one message from the chat from Jennifer Leach with the FTC. Jessica, can you unmute Jennifer? And Jennifer, you have the last word. You always have a great headline suggestion. Okay, so I'm putting you on the
Hi,
spot.
Sandy. I was really agreeing with Jamie, which is the CARS rule protects people and honest dealers.
Yes,
Bottom line.
yes, I think so. Look, this is just so, this is just such a great pleasure to have our oldest, longest partner, the Federal Trade Commission, with whom we've worked since 2015 through a meeting that I had with Jennifer in Hartford at a national consumer rights conference, to be able to end
Sandy, I think you're muted.
I'm not sure how that happened. That wasn't me. I'm just saying it's really an honor to have our last briefing of the year with our very valued longtime partner, the Federal Trade Commission. Thank you so much for making this a really very clear, transparent, and so valuable for all of us as reporters and consumers, news you can use briefing. Our conference is now adjourned, and with best wishes to all for the holidays. Thank you.
That's all for now. Keep watching Desi TV USA. Please like, subscribe, share, and comment.